Frasier Season 2's third episode, which stars Nicholas Lyndhurst as Professor Alan Cornwall, finally resolves a significant issue with Niles' replacement. Although he was the more quirky Crane's sibling, Niles Crane, played by the reboot-averse David Hyde Pierce, in the original series was a snobbish psychiatrist, much like his elder brother Frasier, Kelsey Grammer. Then Niles has eccentricities that are sometimes conceited and cold, but they are counterbalanced by his extreme kindness and compassion. So Niles is arguably the most notable departure of the Frasier reboot among all the original cast members. Fortunately, Frasier has other adversaries in the revival. Although the son of Niles and Daphne, Jane Leaves, David Crane, Anders Keith, possesses the same nervous energy as his father, Frasier's nephew is not as good as the finest Niles replacement from the Frasier reboot. The more interesting stand-in is Alan, a tenured Harvard professor who made friends with Frasier at Oxford many years ago. Alan shares Niles' intellectual equality, and his contempt for his pupils and his job occasionally mirrors Niles' conceited demeanor in social situations. Still, Alan Cornwall balances Frasier out differently too. The Harvard professor isn't hesitant to confront Frasier about his conceited behavior or occasional binge drinking. Regretfully, Alan Cornwall has been squandering time on the second season of the Frasier remake. This error highlights the main issue the program has with Alan's substitute for Niles, which is that he isn't given enough screen time. The highlight of the Frasier revival is Nicholas Lyndhurst's new tricks. The actor's caustic, British wit and impeccable comedic timing provide a refreshing change of pace from some of the show's more overtly American comedy shenanigans. In Frasier Season 2, Episode 3, All About Eve, Professor Cornwall not only displays his humorous skills but also acts as the emotional focal point of the show, underscoring Alan's significance. The sophomore outing's debut was marked by its absurdist comedy, while the second episode mimics Cyrano de Bergerac. The return of Frasier to traditional comedy format in Episode 3 ultimately puts Alan back in the lead role. The Niles stand-in undoubtedly added charm to the season opener, but since he's been largely squandered, the primary problem with Cyrano and Ham is that Alan isn't given any tasks to complete. Frasier's satirical humor doesn't use Professor Alan Cornwall as a punching bag. Alan actually delivers some very sharp jabs of his own, and he deserves the opportunity to do so on television. Alan is given more depth in Frasier Season 2, Episode 3, as it makes good use of him. The idea of All About Eve might be obvious comedy material, but Lyndhurst's Alan and Jess Salgueiro's Eve make the formula work beautifully. It's funny how the finest Alan appearance yet in Season 2 of Frasier is set up by Roz Doyle's Peri Gilpin, unexpected arrival in Episode 3. Roz offers that the worn-out Eve accompany her for a girls' night out, even though Frasier has invited her to a group visit to an art museum. This puts Frasier, Alan, and Freddie, Jack Cutmore Scott, in charge of Eve's child, John, in typical comedy form. The three decide to go ahead with their big night out, thinking they can babysit while having fun, instead of remaining home with the baby. Regardless of how tense their family ties may be, Frasier and Alan are both parents. Is it even legal for us to look after a baby? Alan ponders. Comedy erupts as the three guys clumsily navigate the art exhibit while carrying the infant. But by the end of the show, Alan's character has a lot more depth than just his amusing remarks and actions. Alan is reminded of his separated daughter and other children by spending an evening taking care of John, but the show doesn't take the professor's revelation lightly. Frasier does not make fun of Alan. He has experienced highs and lows with both his father and his son. Rather, it's a realistically depressing scene that's presented honestly. The fact that Alan is the subject of the most heartbreaking and hilarious scenario in Episode 3 serves as more evidence of how important he is to the success of the remake. All About Eve essentially aims to highlight how important Alan is to the reboot in some aspects. Alan plays an important role in maintaining tonal balance and serving as Frasier's contrast because the professor is the character that most closely resembles Niles in terms of dynamic replacement. If anything, the third episode of Frasier Season 2 makes clear how beneficial it is to embrace Alan's complexity as heart and humor. In particular, the third season of Frasier should carry over the success of the first two seasons by keeping in mind the lessons from All About Eve and the episode's masterful usage of Alan.